Hello? Hello? Hi, guys. Can we settle down, please? Okay, great. Thank you. How was coffee? Great. Yeah. So maybe before we move into the next session, while the next moderator prepares, Ms. Kira, please prepare. Could we all stand, please? You have to stand all the time you're with me. So consider yourself young, even if you are above 35, it's okay. You are young at this point in time. So we're just going to continue declaring that we are happy. Are you ready? I'm HIPPY. You're not showing the movement of happy. I'm HIPPY. I know I am. I know I can. I'm HIPPY. Let's go. I'm HIPPY. I'm HIPPY. I know I am. I know I can. I'm HIPPY. Thank you. Allow me to call on stage for our next session. Let's settle down, please. Thank you. So for our next session, please allow me to call on stage Ms. Kira Yusri. Thank you. And Kira, thank you very much. Just so Kira is former special advisor on youth to Commissioner Opalainen and also founder of the UNDI 18. Oh, Undi 18. Okay. Welcome, Ms. Kira. I'll leave this platform for you. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Can you all hear me? As Siatra kindly introduced, my name is Kira. I'm from Malaysia, and I'm also the co-founder of Undi 18, a movement to lower the voting age from 21 to 18 in Malaysia. And we succeeded about 5 years ago. Thank you. But today, it's my pleasure to welcome all of you to this very important session. This morning, you heard inspiring stories from our colleagues and our friends. But today, my session is going to go a little bit deeper into the initiatives of the Youth Action Plan over the past 2 years. Talking about how it has made strides in empowering young people, ensuring their voices are heard, and fostering meaningful participation in key decision-making process. But you're not here to listen to me. I'd like to welcome all my speakers on stage, and we can begin the forum shortly. Please welcome Carlos Sanvi, Santiago Barrel, Kobin Ajamin, Francisca Mitzi, and Betania Lulu Berhan. All right. Before we dive in, I encourage everyone, not just my co-panelists, but also the audience, to all keep in mind the overarching goal of today's discussion is that we want to reflect on the progress that we've made, we want to address the challenges that remain, and we also want to look ahead to the future of youth engagement under the Youth Action Plan. So young people deserve inclusive and meaningful participation in governance, and the EU has committed to amplifying these voices, particularly young women and youth activists. Coming from civil society myself, this resonated strongly with me. And I think the commitment has translated at every level, from local politics to global forums. Successful initiatives like the EU-ASEAN Young Leaders Forum and the Youth and Women Democracy Initiative under the Youth Action Plan has aimed to empower youth-led organizations to advocate for democratic reforms, combat corruption, and improve governance, while providing capacity building for young politicians to strengthen their roles as elected officials. So diving into that topic, I'd like to invite our first speaker, Santiago, on my right. Santiago is a policy officer at the European Partnership for Democracy, EPD, where he is responsible for the overall coordination of the youth democracy cohort and leading advocacy efforts for greater youth political participation around the world. Prior to joining EPD, Santiago worked at the Carter Center and had internship experiences at the European External Action Service, the United Nations Development Programme, and the private sector. He holds a master's degree in international relations from the University of Amsterdam and bachelor's degree in political science from Loughborough University. I hope I got that right. No? Okay. He is originally from Paraguay and is currently based in Belgium. So my question to you, Santiago, what are some of the key structural barriers that still limit meaningful youth participation in political and institutional processes at local, national, and international levels? And I'd just love for you to just share a little bit about the work that you're currently doing in EPD as well.
Yes, thank you very much, Kira, and thank you very much for the space in general. So yes, like Kira said, I would just give a very brief introduction into what we do at EPD for the wide civic engagement project. So the Women, Youth and Democracy Engagement initiative is one of the flagship initiatives of the Youth Action Plan. It is 43 million euros, and it includes 5 components focusing on freedom of association for young people, women's political leadership, the place of women and youth in parliaments, in political parties, and lastly, my project on youth political participation. So we're a little bit of a community. I like to refer to the other projects as the sister or sort of cousin projects. I don't know, we have a few representatives here of the White family. Please raise your hand. Woo! Yeah. So thank you very much. So like I said, this is a great initiative in the sense that it tackles the inclusion of young people and women holistically, but also we are a bit of a community, so we try to work together as much as possible. I would like to just start a little bit with what the Assistant Secretary General Felipe Polier was mentioning in his speech, this myth of youth political apathy. To my fellow young people here, who has been told that they are not interested in politics, that they are lazy? Raise your hands. There you go. Yeah. So like, as Felipe was saying, I also believe that this is a myth. Just to give you a few of our observations from the last years, Young Thais last year voted to defeat the monarchy, the pro-monarchy parties, and they brought in a historical result for the pro-democratic opposition. Young Polish people, they defeated a deeply entrenched illiberal government, and they came together across the political spectrum. And then finally, young Liberians choose peace over violence in their last election to show that young people really care about democratic processes. For being called the most apathetic generation, we're swinging elections. And we're not just swinging elections, but we're also standing up for democracy and human rights when it really counts. So I think that's pretty huge. But there are still some challenges. As Felipe was saying, and also the Commissioner Urpilainen alluded to, we have some deep challenges into the general mistrust and widening gap that we observe between citizens overall, not just young people, and institutions. In this sense, there are many things to say about these challenges, but I really want to focus on one of those things, and that is money. Money matters. We all care about money. It is important. Are we clapping for money? Okay, we can clap for money. But it just has become so expensive in general for people to run for politics. So let's bring the example of Kenya. Anyone from Kenya here? Yeah, let's go. So Kenya has a youth quota in their parliament, which is quite a success and it's quite impressive. I'm not going to say the number because I don't remember. But they have a youth quota. But to run for to become an MP, you need to spend 180,000 USD dollars. That's crazy. That's 3 years of salary as an MP. So even if you do manage to get elected, you won't make that money back in 3 years. So how do you expect young people to fully participate and to make use of that quota when it's so expensive to run for politics? And that really creates an issue of diversity. And this is like a general trend that we observe, that we've studied in our own research, that when you create a youth mechanism or a youth inclusion mechanism, they just replicate the existing inequalities that we see in our society. And this brings a broader issue of the lack of diversity within diversity. So we have diversity. Yes, the Kenyan parliament can look to its young people and look, we have 20 MPs under 35. But these MPs themselves are not diverse. They come from the same backgrounds, their family are politicians. So we are observing that in institutions, but also in our own work. As civil society, we need to look in the mirror, and we also need to say sometimes we just work with the people who is easier to work with, the people who are already capacitated, the people who are traveling to all of these events and who are here every single year. We need to diversify the people we work with, because only then we can really ensure that we're seeing the reality of the state of youth rights around the world. So I'm going to keep it there, and I think you have a follow-up.
Maybe I'll just ask in one-liner some hope or opportunities you think would exist in this sector. Especially, this is the grand year of elections, right? Where the most elections are happening around the world. Any hope that we can see?
Any hope? Yes, and I'll come back to money. Money matters. I'm not saying like we should completely take out money from the equation of politics, but I just want to say that we need an approach that mixes financial incentives and non-financial incentives. We need our youth ecosystem to be organic. We need them to be grassroots, bottom to top. We need money because civil society, we always need money to, pay for rent, pay salaries. We need that, but we need to mix them in with other sorts of incentives to make sure that participation in politics is truly, truly organic. So I'm going to leave it there because I know there's lots to talk about.
Yeah. Thank you, Santiago, for kicking us off. Now, let me introduce our second panelist before I jump to my question. Mr. Huabin Adjemain is the acting head of the thematic unit, An Economy That Works for People, Green, Digital, and Connected, that coordinates policies and programs in the sector of economy, infrastructure, and digital. He was previously the head of cooperation for the EU delegation to Armenia and the head of the infrastructure section in Benin. Bin also has extensive experience in public-private partnerships in Asia. So my question to you is all the way to the other side of the panel now, is that today, and right now in this session, we reflect on 2 years of implementing the Youth Action Plan, as well moving forward. What are some opportunities do we see on the horizon for deepening youth engagement and shaping policies? And before we get to looking forward, I would also love if you could share, some learnings or challenges that you guys have faced when it comes to implementing the YAP as well.
So good morning, everyone. Great pleasure to be here, and great pleasure to talk to younger people. I do feel young, even though maybe the time has passed. Before we all get older, hopefully, but that's what happened. But let me briefly give you some information about what we have done in terms of implementing the Youth Action Plan. There are 3 dimensions, you know them. One is to engage. So how do we engage? I think we'll come back on the money matter, but that's more for the conclusion. So how do we engage? We have different ways to engaging. We have a young European ambassador, goodwill ambassador, Jill connectors. To give you a number, we have 1,000 of ongoing youth ambassadors that are jointly advising us, helping us, supporting, sharing our values and having an impact in our partner countries. But we have a stock, I would say, of a past young ambassador, European ambassador of 4,500. So yes, there's a large population that has been ambassadors, EU young ambassadors. Some of them are less young than before, for sure. We also put in place something that exists in the EU and is quite important, because money matters, but ideas are more powerful than money. But for ideas to be impactful, you have to shape them. You have to understand the narrative. Narrative is very important, and strategy are key. So we have policy labs. We have youth policy labs in the Western Balkans. We have similar policy labs in the Eastern Partnership. We jointly work with GIZ to set up 25 of them. If I can read what my very young thematic officer in my team has prepared for me as a briefing. And an example, because sometimes money matters, but sometimes ideas matter. Like, thanks to engagement with the youth, some of you in Montenegro, for example, we've pushed on the agenda to have a mental health strategy. That was not on the top priority of the government. Engaging with young people in a post-COVID world, it was clear for people engaged in policy that we had to do it. We also have fora where we include and we discuss in both shores of the Mediterranean. We have a youth action plan with Anna Lindh Foundation where we exchange, and I think it's very important to be shared understanding. But what is the most important, I would say, not the most important, but quite critical, is that we're starting a new commission, And every single commissioner designate will have to organize in 100 days a yearly dialogue. I mean, the first one will start in 100 days with young people. So this is clearly a way for us to engage. The second dimension was empowering. I mean, it's a very nice word, but what do we mean by empowering? I mean, there's a framework. I think it's a quite interesting framework that we have in Europe, that we engage in our candidate countries, which is called the Youth Guarantee. So the Youth Guarantee, in a nutshell, is a policy, a vision, a framework, a desire, a direction of travel to make sure that all people between 15 and 29, when not in education, not employed, or not in a training, receive within 4 months after leaving education system, losing job, or an offer of education, training, and employment. Is to make sure that things keep on moving. So this is.
No, I was going to say, I think that's a very interesting point. I'd love to dive into the empower section a little bit more when I think we go into the education and skills-based conversation down the line. So I'm just going to ask you to hold your thought a little bit. We're going to circle back on that. That's a really good jargon to use, by the way. We're going to circle back on that later. But I'd like to just talk about bringing us back to the Youth Action Plan overall, and something that I think was mentioned earlier in the Commissioner's speech was also talking about how the EU and the Big Six youth organizations have partnered to launch the 10 million euros EU Youth Empowerment Fund, a pilot initiative under the Global Youth Mobilization. So that's the money matters that Santiago was talking about. Let's give a round of applause for that grant, right? So this fund aims to provide young people in EU partner countries with vital resources to contribute to sustainable development and the objectives of Agenda 2030. I'm told that we have a very cool video that highlights a little bit about the GYM and what they've done so far. So maybe we're gonna take 2 minutes to just take a look, and then I'll introduce our next speaker.
They now have that service.
Every movement starts with a pulse. A spark within you. Our spark is the power of youth, igniting change around the world. Youth-led initiatives, supported by the Youth Empowerment Fund, tackle the world's biggest challenges at the local level. Powered by a partnership between the European Union and the Big Six youth organizations, delivered through the Global Youth Mobilization, a flagship of the EU Youth Action Plan, the Youth Empowerment Fund breaks down barriers to funding, develops skills and capacity in young leaders, providing networking opportunities and more. Cycle 1 of the Open Call received over 10,400 applications from 178 countries and across the Big Six networks. Youth-led solutions mobilizing thousands of young people are underway. Young people coming together to make their communities stronger, healthier, and more sustainable. The Global Youth Mobilization's youth-led model places young people at all levels of decision-making, from selecting grant recipients, consulting on boards, and leading projects on the ground, with the ideas submitted from around the globe being reviewed by our 168 youth panelists. The project applications received focus on the UN Sustainable Development Goals, including themes of education, peace and equity, climate change, improving health and well-being, tackling poverty, and building a sustainable economy. It puts ideas into action. It empowers underrepresented and marginalized communities, and it gives young people the power to lead and create local solutions. The pulse within you becomes the power of youth. Together, we're creating real impact, building the future today. Whatever your passion, the Youth Empowerment Fund can help you become the change maker your community needs. This is your moment. This is your global youth movement. Let's create change together.
That's an Oscar-winning video, you know. I think it's a really good way to illustrate the really awesome work that the consortium have done so far. But I do want to just shine the spotlight on one of the figures behind the movements and introduce Carlos Sanvi on my right. Carlos started his YMCA journey as a volunteer in Togo, helping recruit new members during the organization's revitalization. In 1987, he joined YMCA's Toko's staff as Leadership Development Secretary and later served as Deputy General Secretary for 5 years. In 1999, he moved to Geneva to work with World YMCA Executive Secretary of Finance Administration, contributing to the organization's strategic direction, overseeing key initiatives including a new fund policy and a fair share formula review. In 2007, Carlos became the General Secretary of the African Alliance of YMCAs, leading the movement of 12 years with a focus on youth empowerment. Last July, he was elected as the first African Secretary General of World YMCA, officially starting in January. Carlos is now pursuing a strategy of radical collaboration to position the YMCA as the leading global organization for youth empowerment. What an extensive experience that you have in this network. I mean, that's really amazing. I've only done 5 years in my NGO, and I'm ready to leave, man. So, it's really inspiring. But, I'd love to just get your thoughts on a little bit on GYM's progress so far. And I think if you could just share specifically, how have young people been actively involved in the institutional decision-making through these models? Because I think the video highlighted that, this is for youth, by youth. Young people apply for the grants. Young people are the one doing the selection. Could you maybe share a little bit of that kind of model? Because I think young people have been advocating for this for a very long time as well.
Thank you, Kira. By the way, when this was written, there was no chat GPT, so it was not very accurate. I'm here representing my colleague of the Big Sis. Big Sis is not the 5 big animal plus 1, but it's just the largest youth movement. Together, we reach out to 250 million young people on a yearly basis. And because many of our organizations are more than 100 years old, we think we reach more than 1 billion young people. And each of us have a different way of approaching youth and empowering young people. But why I'm here is representing the global youth mobilization. We are in our second phase of the global youth mobilization. The first phase was born through COVID, and we reach out, we enable young people, 600,000, more than 600 young youth people to come with their solution, their own solution. So what is the global youth mobilization? Imagine different circle. The first large circle is young people design this themselves. We did not come with an idea and invite young people first to apply. They design it. So for us, the first level is about the ownership of this, what we are doing. And then in terms of governance, in terms of how we led it, we create a governance system where the CEO of our 6 organizations, together with 1 youth representative, many of them are in this room, we are equal partners. Young person equal the CEO of a global organization. That is how we believe that young people can provide leadership to this organization. The third level, third circle you need to look at is about the youth panelists. This is a group of young people. We have currently on this second phase, 186, you saw it in the video, that decides. I never decide which program to finance. Young people decide themselves. And when the decision is made, the young people come together and implement to empower the community. And we make sure that there is no too much hurdle between the application and the receiving of the fund and the report. Because young people are so marginalized in those decision-making process, and we make sure that young people have easy access and the decisions are made by young people themselves. So that's at the heart of the global youth mobilization. Now, the next level we need to think about is how do we ensure that more young people that does not read, that does not know that there is application can participate. That's why we are so pleased, we are grateful to be part of this Youth Empowerment Fund with European Union. The first global youth mobilization, we got 5 million from WHO and UN Foundation, but the AU, through the Youth Empowerment Fund, double it. So we have 10 million to make the work, and we are so happy that the first application we sent out, more than 10,400 young people apply and give us more headache than what we anticipate. But
it's because a good kind of problem,
it's a
right?
good problem we need to solve, and it's working in that direction.
Yeah.
So basically we're saying this designed by youth, implement by youth, oversight by youth, and then the young people are very responsible. People think that young people cannot be accountable.
Yeah.
They are wrong,
Yeah.
and that's why we are here.
Could you maybe share one significant highlight that you've seen so far in this process?
You know, people are talking about mental health. The first youth mobilization, the first one, the number of initiatives led by young people that address mental health, not the way we believe they should address it, but coming from themselves. If you look at those initiatives, having a group of people to detect the first early sign of mental health, and then how to build a support group around that, it was phenomenal, because young people know from their peer what is going on, and the solution they come with addressing mental health is phenomenal. I think governments need to be able to learn from that and change some of the way they address mental health issue in the communities.
I mean, I think that's very inspiring. Thank you for sharing. What a great example. And I think just bouncing off the whole youth-led and young people at the forefront, I want to just shift the spotlight to the two young women next to me, getting them to share their experience and their thoughts as well. So on my left is also a similar alumni, former special advisor to the Commissioner Yutri Lainen, Bitania. Bitania served as the first special advisor on youth to the EU Commissioner in 2021-2022. She is an award-winning African leader driving youth involvement in public policy through dialogues with heads of states and policymakers. Currently, she is the youngest program director at MREF Health Africa, leading YAC to strengthen youth-led advocacy and participation in decision-making. Bitania has been recognized internationally, including being listed in the 100 most influential young Africans 3 times and named an Obama Leader Africa in 2022. Yeah, exactly. Just give a round of applause. That is woo-woo material. Maybe for Bitania, I want to just get your thoughts on you were the first special advisor, and then I came along, and then Natalia, and then Naya. What lessons have you learned? I think from your experience, and also working in collaboration with us as well, and just your experiences throughout your term as the special advisor, and I guess reflecting overall on this role. Is it tokenistic? What value does it give to the people that we're actually advising, right? We're talking a lot about youth advisory structures here, locally, nationally, regionally. But what is it really about? And what are we really doing? And do we actually have the legitimacy to give this kind of advice to people in power? Yeah.
Very good series of questions. First of all, I think what the role gave was legitimacy to young people. I was the first appointed special advisor on youth to European Union, and people were wondering why an African and why special advisor on youth. And that was a strong statement made by Commissioner Yutri. She wanted to make sure that there's political will and commitment to co-lead with young people. And it was sending a strong message to other member states, also leaders from our African and Asian and the different, the global leaders, to ensure that young people's voices matter. And it's not always us mentoring young people, but young people themselves can also advise us on how we do things. So that was to reaffirm the legitimacy and the leadership role that young people play. And also, it painted a picture of equal partnership. Not everyone may agree with that equal partnership part in terms of, specifically speaking, the European-African dynamics, where most of their relationship has been the colonial history and the aid. Having a special advisor from Africa to really advise on the issues of young people and international partnerships also created that hope that knowledge can transfer from the global south to the global north. So those are the two important learnings that I had, and it was the emphasis of youth leadership. The other thing is an engagement. Right after I came along, the Global Youth Sounding Board was announced, and then in the different visits that Commissioner made to the different countries, she also made it a point to inspire and encourage the EU delegation offices to start YSB Youth Sounding Boards at the local level. But what does that really mean? Does being given a seat at the table ensure that you're listened and heard? Does it really? It doesn't. Seat at the table doesn't mean that you're even given a space to speak. And if you're given a space to speak, doesn't mean that you're heard. And if you're heard, it doesn't mean that your voices may influence. So we are now trying to create that meaningful engagement, to step away from that tokenistic approach of course, now the European Union has a youth advisor and they have a commitment to youth, but stepping away from just using those as political, commitments, but actual work on the ground to
Not
ensure
just like
that
populist promises.
exactly, but to ensure that young people are meaningfully engaged. But even beyond that, what does it mean by engagement? If we don't prepare young people to adequately represent the many voices of the youth across the world, does it really mean meaningful youth engagement? So that capacity building is very, very important. I'll give an example of what we do as AMRA, for example, how civil societies can play a role in preparing young people for these roles. The organization I work for, AMRA for Health Africa, is the largest Africa-based health organization, but we have a youth division called YACT to prepare young people, grassroots leaders, on how to advocate for their rights and how to co-create with leaders to change policies, to really ensure that these sustainable changes are made and institutionalized. It's not just the YSBs coming to play their role and leaving and not changing policies, but all these young people coming to play are actually changing the policies, and also knowledge transfer is attained. Perhaps a learning and recommendations that I have is remuneration of young people is very important. If we are assigned a role as experts, we should also be remunerated, right? So I am a strong advocate of remuneration of young people for the skills that they bring to the table. But also, there should be a sustainable investment to youth-led initiatives so that it doesn't die off with one special advisor or one cohort of youth sounding boards, but ensuring that these changes reach to the ground and they are sustainable. And to my last point, I know that the Global Gateway has 5 interest areas, which is digital, climate, transport, health, and education. And most of the time, young people are just aligned with, or called after the climate and digital because they're vocal about it, and maybe sometimes health. And they're left out of the big money in terms of like transport, infrastructure. Youth empowerment is not talking about just young people advising. It is integrating the youth empowerment in all the models and all the 5 pillars that we have in the Global Gateway. So make this Global Gateway work for young people, employ young people, ensure that even in these transport and infrastructure projects that we have to assess how are we uplifting the lives of young people so that we have investment to sustainable leadership and achieving the sustainable goals.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think there's a lot to unpack there, and I'd love if someone have questions in the Q&A session later to unpack that. We're going to get to that later, but I have my eye on you, don't worry. I want to just also maybe take like a historical trip down the lane of like exploring how the youth sounding board started. This morning you heard a lot of amazing impact stories and inspiring learnings from members of Youth Sounding Board. I'd like to introduce Francisca Mizzi, who is a lawyer and development specialist. She is the program manager and youth focal point at the EU delegation to Zimbabwe. She supports the implementation of EU projects on justice, parliament, local authorities, and youth, amongst others. As a youth focal point, she contributed to the establishment of the first ever Youth Sounding Board in April 2021. Let's give her a round of applause, everybody. So, as a pioneer or a history change maker, so to say, could you share a little bit of the process and the thought process as well as the journey to setting up the first ever YSB, and maybe your reflections of like how all your the subsequent YSBs have been so far, and of course talking about the model as well and how it's beneficial.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Kara. I guess the journey of being a pioneer is very rewarding, but it also has several challenges. So when Commissioner Yupilainen announced that we want to have more meaningful engagement of young people, and we should set up youth sounding boards, of course we went for it, because in Zimbabwe the majority, more than 70% are young people. And then, we called for applications, they came, it was, a nomination process. And then when they came, I think they were expecting that there's already a template, something is there, it's established, so what are we gonna do? Yeah. And then they came, they were like, okay, so what's next? what are we going to do? I'm like, you are the first. We have no precedent. We are starting this. All we want to do is to ensure that you are participating in the institution, in institutional decision making. So we are going to co-create. We are going to work together to do it. Some of them didn't believe it. They were like, what? You mean we will advise the EU?
Yeah.
Yes, you will advise the EU. We will inform the EU. Yes, you will inform the EU. Are we going to be monitoring? Yes. What does that mean? Monitoring projects? Yes. So they were like, really? Can we do that? And I think it was a moment where they couldn't believe that you are setting the template. So I was like, let's get on it. Let's start working on it, guys, because we are going to lead the way for other youth sounding boards to come. And I never imagined that 2 years later, there'll be 30 plus and we'll be sitting with there and with the OG YSB. No, we didn't. So what I'm happy now over the past 2 years is that the YSB has been shining. You know, we've been talking about youth sounding boards, youth advisory structures, and when we started it, they came up with their own rules, ways of working, a structure, and all of that. And later on, we were receiving calls from various delegations across the world wanting to know how we did it. But what I'm very proud about it is each youth sounding board or advisory structure that was formed, they domesticated it. They understood the needs and the priorities of youth in their own countries.
Right.
Yes, it came
It's
from...
very nuanced, right? The different context that we work in.
Yes,
as well.
from the different contexts.
Yeah.
So we are also learning from them. We are also changing and evolving and learning from them. And one thing that we are so proud of from the first YSB and even the second YSB, and sometimes, you know, as a lesson, you're like, did we sign up for this? We were actually developing our multi-annual indicative program for Zimbabwe for the next 7 years. That was 2021 to 2027. And they were like, youth have to be included in this multi-annual indicative plan, which was about, I think, 80 million euro. Youth have to be included. So we put all the, you know, the nice words, youth mainstreaming, vocational education, youth with disability, all of those things. And then we're like, okay, we are sorted. And then they're like, but you said we can monitor. So put it inside that multi-annual indicative program for Zimbabwe that we will monitor implementation of the multi-annual indicative program for the next 7 years. I'm like, okay, I need to find out if this is, you know, you're like afraid, like, can we do this?
Yeah.
But later on, you go back and say, we did it together, so we'll continue. So it's there, it's available online, it's a public document. For the next 7 years, that's what they've been doing, that's what they've been advising on. And one of the first things was like, you keep saying supporting youth, empowering youth, engaging, connecting. We've looked at all EU projects you are implementing in Zimbabwe. Very few are youth-led. And you know, you start listening to respond and tell them about the impossibilities of funding small youth organizations or even individuals. But they kept pushing, and what we learned was listen to come up with a solution together.
Yeah.
And now we came up with call for proposals. We're giving young people small grants from as little as €1,000 to 10,000 if they're individuals, and then the smaller organization, 10,000 to 60,000. And it's working. I think we're now in year 2 of our first project, and the other one will start this year. And we've connected them to civil society organizations. So I think with the small steps and working together and trusting them, because young people, they know what they want. Listen to them and try and find a solution together. Don't give them the template of, you know, the EU has been there for long, 70 years. So don't always look in the past and say, it has never been done, or the rules are saying this, or the procedure are saying this. But you sit down also as an institution and find a way to help young people.
I mean, that's really, really inspiring. I think, and I think there's definitely a lot to be learned from in terms of how you engage young people. Maybe just a quick question, right? Like, there's always the preconception that young people is not able to handle these fundings or grants when they're given a responsibility to. But maybe could you share, like, you know, what do you think there needs to be additional support given to prepare, especially grassroots NGOs, right? It's always, you know, when we want to access funds from established organizations or grant mechanisms. There's always all these requirements that grassroots organizations are not ready for. In your experience, how do we get around to like helping young people to get better access to this kind of support?
Yeah, indeed. I think, yes, it is true. Because some of them maybe it's a very new organization, innovative idea, they're passionate, they can do it, but they don't have the structures that are needed. Because you also need to safeguard the taxpayers' money. And you also need to ensure that the results are achieved at the end of the day. So we have embedded in part of these calls, in part of these projects, a capacity building component.
Okay.
What are their needs as an institution and then as individuals? So you train them on establishing those structures, on financial management, on communication, and also on reporting on EU rules and regulations. Because it may be simple for you having worked for the EU or going through them, but to someone new, it's like a totally different language. So you're going to tell them, you need to report, and I want the impact on the results. But what does it mean? How do I even collect
Even
it?
the words like M&E is very new to many young NGOs, right? What is monitoring? What is evaluation?
Exactly.
Thank you so much. I want to just transition a little bit into the other aspects to youth empowerment and exploring the value of public-private partnerships, right? I think a lot of the practical aspects of youth empowerment is not just global platforms or forums or panels, but it's also exploring essential skills that young people need to become the change makers in their community, addressing key challenges besides assessing funding, as well as the progress, the progress that they've done so far and the lessons that they've learned. So I want to move to Bin. I think you highlighted a little bit earlier in terms of access and the program that you provide, that the team has provided. But maybe could you share a little bit, like in your opinion, what skills and tools specifically do young people need to become effective change makers? And looking beyond like NGOs or capacity building, but education reforms, valuable partnerships, how can, especially the private sector, how can this give added value to equip young people for leadership roles when they want to address societal challenges?
We're clearly facing tectonic change. I mean, everyone knows about AI. Everyone knows that 60% of tomorrow's jobs have to be created. Everyone sees the impact of ChatGPT. I mean, even in the selection of people, even in so we don't really know, and this is quite interesting, how to move ahead. I was recently at the board of a school thinking about what's the next model and how do we engage on AI. So here, what is fascinating for young people is that it's unknown. It has to be discovered, it has to be tested. So what we need to know is that we need to be agile, and you need to discover the way forward, because we are the old generation. So we talked a lot about the money and the power of the money, and I hear you with supporting civil society, but let me give you in perspective. Anymore, but it's okay. In Digineer, through Global Gateway, we have leveraged 54 billion euro. So 54 billion euro, it's a lot, and for sure, it's what is important. It's important to have a program to engage with communities, with youth, and to get inspired. But how do we drive the thing? I don't think it's that easy. Why isn't it that easy? Also, because there's it's not enough, 54 billion. Facing the challenges that are coming, I mean, the need in climate change, we need trillion, we don't need billions, so we need to engage with the private sector. If we only knew how to do it, we would do it.
Yeah.
So there's an unknown here, there's a need of creativity, the need of create new models, and the best to create new model is to not to know the old models. So this is why we count on you to drive on these AI threat and opportunities, and to also crack the approach of how do we better engage with the private sector, but for the public good, to tackle the climate change. How do we develop nature-based solutions? They are topics we talk about, but when you look at the number, we don't do enough. So no, we don't have a solution. Yes, I have a full narrative, and I can tell you that we help thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people in VET, in university, we have partnership, in Erasmus, we put 1 billion. We do all of this. We're nearly working in every single of 20 countries in curricular reform. Great, we have a lot of entrepreneurship. Fantastic. But are we cracking? Are we finding the solution to the problem we're facing? Just a number in the coming generation. We have 1 billion of climate change refugees on the border of Europe. So how do we do it? How do we use them to build a better world? We want to do it together. So in a way, what we're looking for, and I know, seen from your perspective, sometimes money is very important, but seen from someone managing a lot of budget, we need clear structure, vision that are implementable, that make the ties, that build new type of partnership with the private, with the civil society. We need new model. Unless we find new model, we will not be able to move across the different crises we're facing. So youth sounding board, excellent, but they have to be pragmatic. And it's pretty hard because they have to be pragmatic on the big scale. So they are different level, and this is interesting. In my position, I work on the small scale, so little grant to civil society, and which are hundreds of millions. And I worked on the bigger scale, which are billion structured deals. But we need to move from the small to the big. We need to think, unless it's scalable, it's nice, good impact, it's charity, but we're looking for the scalability. Where is it? We don't know. So let's explore together, and let's also, from our side, this is a difficulty we face. I don't think there's an issue of money, but we clearly have an issue, and this is when you involve in policy, of capacity to listen. To listen to others, you need to be open to ideas of others, but other has to know also how to talk to you, because it's not that we have a lot of time. Yeah. It's not like you can spend an afternoon. It's probably the first time it's in my portfolio, youth, but it's the first time I'm spending 3 hours on youth. Even though it's on my portfolio, it's not important. It's just that in terms of money, it's like 0.5% my portfolio. But I do understand the importance. So what is needed is to structure, to know how it works, the system. So I would say it's not money, it's understanding on what is the leverage in the system and driving in the need of creativity. Who better knows AI than you guys? I mean, it's not me that knows that. My daughters, my kids know better than this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Again, so much to unpack there. So hopefully we have time in the Q&A as well. I want to shift back into looking at how, looking into research and understanding the landscape would help us inform effective interventions as well, and I'm aware that this was something that EPD is looking into. So, for you, Santiago, this is me giving a sneak peek that, he's going to talk about something called the Youth Participation Index. How does that, in your experience, empower tools like this are important to equip young people and giving them access, or not access, but maybe capacity to increase political participation? Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, Kira. Yes, we all love data. We all love big numbers and fancy numbers that we can use in our speeches, in our work. So yes, this is one of the big deliverables of our project. The Wide Civic Engagement Project is, like Kira said, a global youth political participation index. And this is a bit of a tease because right now we finished the pilot phase of the study, but to give you sort of overview of what it is, we are looking at youth participation holistically. We're not just looking at parliaments, political parties, CSOs, we're looking at everything. So this is sort of like a tool for policymakers, which I know there's quite a few here, and for civil society practitioners to use in their work to find gaps and potential solutions. I think the most important thing that we're trying to get out of this is to find what are the practices that work the best and how do they work the best. I mentioned quotas before. I don't want to dismiss quotas completely. They work in a certain way, and this is about finding how to complement youth quotas better with other youth policies in a more systematic way. Right now, like I said, we finished a pilot study. It covered 15 countries. In the first edition, we're going to cover around 70 to 80 countries, and it's going to be finished by the middle of 2025. So be on the lookout for that. There's going to be a dedicated website that is going to be user-friendly and accessible to everyone. And then on top of that, we're looking for partners in the academic community to carry out future editions of the index and to expand its reach. An index is only as useful as it stays relevant and updated. Otherwise, it's useless.
Yeah, I think Yeah.
Not useless.
Yeah. No. Sorry. I think, sometimes there's a lot of databases, a lot of information out there, but how we use it is the most important part, right? And I want to, pass the floor over to Carlos, speaking about, we talked a lot about providing young people with skills, equipping them with the necessary information and everything else from data to funding. So since GYM is, all about mobilizing young people and giving them the most, not most important, but one of the most important support for them to kickstart their journey. I guess, what are some challenges that you have faced? I mean, we want to be realistic here, right? It's really great to talk about youth-led and youth moving the way forward, but it's not going to be easy. It's not a perfect model. Could you maybe share what are some challenges that, first of all, young people face in assessing fundings, especially when they want to lead or run their own solutions in their own communities? And I guess in your work, in your context as well, what kind of funding initiatives or models would be the most helpful for them? Would it be like loans or small grants, or just looking straight into the EU Commission for support? What are your thoughts?
Thank you. First, I'll quote Santiago to say the problem is the money. We get the money, clean money, that's important.
Yeah.
But I also want to talk to Ben. You are looking for a new model, you have GYM. Let's talk after this meeting. So GYM is about availing money on the hand of young people. But there is a misconception to think that working with young people is a risky business. The risk is not working with young people. And this is what the decision maker needs to realize. It's so risky to ignore the energy, the drive of young people.
Yeah.
In the Greek mythology, there is this myth of Sisyphus. Sisyphus is this guy who was punished by the god to roll a big stone on the top of the hill. And then by the time he reached that, the stone rolled back, and he have to do it over and over. I think young people of today are the new Sisyphus. They have all those things to roll, to make an effort, to have access to funding. It's so difficult. I bet you, young people in Zimbabwe, they don't even have access to European Union offices in Harare. Young people in Kokahama, they cannot reach anyone. So the access to the origin of the fund is very complicated. The forms are so difficult. So what we are doing in the GYM is to remove this red tape and to ensure that we make it simple for young people. And us as an organization, we take the risk on behalf of the young people. We take the risk on behalf, and then we don't just take because we share it, because we are driving
What are some of the
intergeneration.
risks that you could highlight? Just so, as we young people, we should know what goes into it.
It's basically take the money and not deliver, and disappear.
Yeah.
So it's happening. But it's not only young people who take money disappear. What is it? So the risk is there. We see all over. But we blow out of proportion the risk on young people. And that's why our organization, we are able to take that risk and to speak on behalf. And the GYM even is born in COVID, when young people were pointed finger to say they are not respecting the rule, they are not doing this, they are not doing that. But when we brought young people together and create a space where they can trust our organization, they came with this initiative. So take the risk on behalf of young people is key.
Yeah, you want to...
Yes, just very quickly, because this is also big of, like, some of our biggest advocacy points is around flexible funding. And it's something that we hear there is appetite when we speak to some of the biggest donors, without naming names, that they want to support social movements, because young people, all of us, some of us are not associated to the biggest civil society organizations. We are part of an organization that is not registered politically, it's not registered publicly, it doesn't have a bank account, so it's difficult, it's different. And they want to target those people, but then they have 15 pages of an application that they need to fill out. And it's like, really? Do you really want to target those people? Because I agree that there are risks. And for me, it's not necessarily about dismissing them. It's more about acknowledging that there are those risks. And if you really want to make an impact, gamble.
You know, I'm a parent and I have kids. When they come back from school, we help them to do their homework. Why can't we do that in society? Help young people to do their homework so that they have access to more opportunity, all those things. And that's why our organizations are here to hold hands and to make sure that they have the safe space to progress in life.
Yep.
That is so important.
Yep.
But the other part of that is there is only a certain group of young people who have access to the information. When we send the information out, only those who can read, those who can see, those who can hear, those who can walk to the place have access. What about the others?
Yeah.
But there are so many other layers of young people, so we need to bridge those barriers to make sure that the information is so simplified for people and to make sure that they have the resources. Put money in the hands of the young people is at the core of the GYM. And we are talking about $3,000 to $5,000, and you'll see the amount of good ideas that are coming off young people. You'll be amazed to say, you know, these politicians all over need to go for internship with the young people to learn how to come with a simple idea to bring the solution. That's what we are about. And I'm very happy that European Union now is talking to us and to use the GYM as a model to reach out to more young people and to make sure that they come with the solution.
Thank you. I believe Ben would like to respond as well.
I just wanted to touch base and maybe build on what Carlos said. I mean, when you're a major donor, I mean, you only have limited resources, and the limited resources are not your money, the budget you manage. It's more your staff. So it's very important that you say you don't want to have a lot of contract. Then we could say, this doesn't make sense. Why don't you help and give a little bit of money to all the little association? You can't. I mean, I was head of corporation in different countries. I don't do that because I don't have the time. It's not possible. There are due process to be done. It's important to crack, and it's important to understand that we have constraints, and they are not sometimes financial, but actually when engaging with the young, they're not financial. It's like the model. And the model could be a re-granting scheme. This is important. And we could do more re-granting scheme, but it's also important for us to know, will I get impact for what I put in? You see? Because a lot of people come to us and, give us money, we'll give on money to the young people, but do I really have impact? How is the impact? Because at the end of the day, we want impact, we have limited time. The truth is the time is not the money. We have limited time, and we want to find the best modality. So this is something that is more boring. You know, when you're an activist and you want to change the world, you're thinking, let's do the thing. But for us, someone has to think about the how, because unless we tackle the how, it doesn't trickle down except a little bit of visibility, charity, but it's so small compared to the impact we could have if we find a modality, so a way that we feel safe as the donor, we see impact, we measure impact, we have to measure, we take risk, we're okay, but we need this. That was just some thought.
I'm looking forward, there's a real debate here going on. So interesting, right? But we do have to get through the panel today. So I think we've talked a lot about engagement, skills building, capacity building, empowering young people, but keeping on track, on brand with our 3 pillars of the day, I want to go into our final section before, if we have time, into Q&A for Francisca to share, you've seen the evolution of the youth sounding boards over the past, over the years, and as a lot of the panelists have spoken about this morning as well, talking about alumni engagement, talking about what's next, what are some of your recommendations or any suggestions that you have for how do we not let, the people that have, we've been involved for 1 year each, the YSBs are 2 years at various levels as well. So how do we, make sure that we're still involved, we're still connected? Oh, connect. See? We don't lose track of this really valuable network that we have.
Okay, thank you, Kira. Well, I had many recommendations, but let me just jump into my messenger role because it wraps up everything, and it's a way of us as the EU implementing more the Connect pillar of the Youth Action Plan. So I think this is also a take-home. If you have to take in these three things that we are going to do under the Connect pillar for the next action. I think it will start in January 2025. So we've been listening, we've had experience, and we feel that we need to ensure that young people are connected. There's an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast,
Go alone.
if you go alone, if you want to go far, go together. So you need to stay connected so that we go together. So this action is going to do three things. One, it's going to enhance outreach and engagement of young people. So we are trying to improve the quality and the quantity of our engagement or our access to information. He mentioned that we give them information that there are scholarships, be it Erasmus Mundus, or there is the visitors program, there are call for proposals. But how do you get this? So sometimes you may think that it's just a click away, but not for all youth. There are various barriers, physical, technological, socio-economic backgrounds. So we want to ensure that through this action, we are going to help youth to navigate this information. Find that EU youth opportunity that's available for you as a young people. When you find it, how do you get it? How do you apply for it? How do you go about it? How do you share it? That's what the action will seek to do, to give the tools for that. And then the second one is the alumni engagement. I think the OGYSB is so happy about this one. Our first YSB in Zimbabwe, I think Mauritius now, they have. So we're trying to ensure that all the young people have benefited from different EU projects and also been empowered, whether it's the Youth Sounding Board, whether it's a visitors program or it's a project. We continue to get you connected and you continue to participate. And it supports the Global Gateway strategy of long-term trusted connections.
Yep.
And we want to continue benefiting from you. And then the last thing, we know young people are participating at multilateral fora. She was a special envoy, so were you, some are the same at the UN. So it will also support the EU delegation in New York to provide logistical, technical, administrative support to youth envoys who are representing other youth at the UN and other multilateral forums. So those are the three things that will help us to go far under our connected pillar.
So I hope that all the alumni that are listening would reach out to her afterwards so that you guys can get access to these resources as well. Moving on to Britannia, talking about connecting with the alumni, but also in general, young people working on similar issues across. I think personally for me, there's always been an issue working, not issue per se, but the challenges, right? Working with people across different corners of the world, right? How many of you have been in calls like 3, 4 a.m. because, you just have to navigate the time zones and the unlucky one that's in one corner or the other. But just in your experiences, what are some best practices to ensure, strong, genuine connections are made when we're all probably very different from each other?
Thanks for that question, Kira. I'm going to go back in time a little bit. I started my activism or advocacy journey about 11 years ago when I joined university to study electrical and computer engineering. But I pivoted to do youth development full-time because of the gaps that I've seen in terms of creating the connection within peers, but also like-minded brains across the continent. In 2015, I led the biggest conference in Africa, the Agenda 2063 Youth Summit. I don't know if some of you know Agenda 2063. When the African Union was celebrating their 50th anniversary in 2013, they came up with a 50-year vision called the Agenda 2063. And it was designed with the leaders that were then there.
Yeah.
Will they be there in the next 50 years? Will they? Maybe some of us in this room might be. The youth bracket might be there in the next 50 years, but the leaders there weren't there, will not be there. So we felt the need to really mobilize young people from the age of 18 to 35 from across the continent, including the diaspora, to really ensure that this 50-year plan is inclusive and driven by young people, because they're the ones that will make it a reality. Fast forward to 2017, exactly 7 years ago, on October 10th, we had the third Africa-Europe Youth Summit in Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire. And I was one of the lucky participants that were part of that conversation. And a number of recommendations came out of that summit. And it was followed by the AU-EU Youth Plug-in Initiative. It was a 6-week project a program to ensure that young leaders from both continents design and craft working frameworks for engagement. And that grew into the AU-EU Youth Cooperation Lab that had a number of business ideas and entrepreneurial innovation ideas and funded 2 young people on the ground from both continents and that were making an impact and being able to scale. Then fast forward to 2022, and I was appointed as the first special advisor on youth. When we had the AU-EU Youth Track, we gathered young leaders from both continents and the diaspora, but it wasn't to repeat the same things. Everything it's a building block, right? Yep. So you can't discredit everything that has been done and then start from scratch. So that importance of continuation of work needs to be emphasized. So it was built on, there was a EU report that was done by the EU in partnership with the UNESCO to really hear from 450,000 young people from across the world on their priorities so that what was said in 2015 doesn't get repeated, but we are also on track and we are keeping up to date with the priorities of young people. So all of those things, it was a full circle moment when we had the 2022 AU-EU Youth Track, connecting these leaders and ensuring that, reflecting back on what has been done and how can we pivot and doing things better. Just to say that, now is the time to also discuss how are we going to do things differently in the future, and the importance of a strong monitoring evaluation framework so that to see what has really made an impact in the lives of young people, what has changed within the European Union framework, what are the connection modalities that would work for young people. So it's not just focusing on the past, but it is important to look back to see how far you've come and then to really envision what's going to happen in the future.
So not working in isolation, but
absolutely
still moving forward.
So 4 points that I would leave the audience with. Monitoring evaluation, I cannot say that enough, and learning to ensure that all the efforts that have been done so far will not get discredited. Besides the point of bringing in a new commissioner or the change of leadership, it shouldn't be based on personal will of leaders, but it should be an institutionalized way of mechanism to learn, evaluate, and continue the work that we've done in the youth work. Thank you. Second point is the need for intergenerational co-leadership. I know that the older speakers here may feel out of place when they're on a youth panel, but we're not really trying to push you out. We are trying to co-lead with you. That intergenerational co-leadership is extremely important to have the whole of society approach of elevating societies and everyone, not just young people, creating a world that works for everyone. Obviously, all of us here are privileged. We have to acknowledge that privilege. We are educated, we speak English, we know how to dress well, that's why we're here, right? But we have the responsibility of the millions and billions of young people that are not here in the room today. So all of you, when you go back to your communities, ensure that the information reaches them, connect with them, and ensure that we empower everyone. And last but not least, investment in youth and future generation is the purest form of investing in sustainable development. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So with that very inspiring note, and I think it's not just a reflection, right, but it's also a call to action. And the screen is flashing red at me. So I don't think we have time for questions, but there is going to be lunch and a marketplace going on after this, so I do encourage you to approach our speakers with their permission to you don't have time, trust me. Because if I think I want to avoid the floodgates. Sorry? Yeah, okay, see, they're looking at me now. So I just want to invite my panelists to share one, very quick 1-minute takeaway from your discussion today, but also a call to action to young people. We talked about funding, we've talked about workshops, we've talked about research, data, we've talked about looking forward to the future, structures, so many different words, so many different initiatives. So, maybe just one line to summarize, or a pitch from your organizations or your work to our audience here, online and offline. Maybe we'll start with Carlos.
Thank you. I will address the leaders in the room and listen to us. To say, let's stop using young people for window dressing. Let's genuinely give them the space. They are not commodities. They are change makers. And they are telling us every day, nothing for us without us.
Yeah.
So it's so important that we learn. We don't feel pushed out. We feel invited to go to the circle of young people to be these intergenerational leaders. And that's what's going to make the change we are looking for. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Carlos. I always like to think that our politics is a reflection of our civil society, and our civil society is a reflection of our politics. So I like to say that if we have an organic, dynamic, and collaborative civil society, that approach and those values are going to be reflected in our politics. So because I know most of your practitioners and are working from the ground in your communities, I encourage you to take that with you, because then you're going to see the fruits in your policymakers. Thank you.
Thank you. And anything to add on from your very inspiring call to action already?
Make meaningful youth engagement a norm. Just make it a norm so that we step away from asking for us to be included, but we do the work that needs to be done to transform the world.
Okay, I think a message is to other youth focal points and delegations, with or without youth sounding board. Let's listen to find solutions and co-create together with young people. And to young people, as said by one of the speakers earlier, give us compelling reasons, talk to us, convince us, educate us. It does not mean we know everything. We are working with you because we also want to learn from you. Thank you.
So maybe to the young here, most of you then, you have an amazing opportunity with this new commission, because it's embedded in the mandate of all designated commissioner and future commissioner to have a dialogue with you. So make the dialogue fruitful. I mean, if you come to us, with what we already do, I mean, there's nothing wrong. That would be talking to ourselves, but like through younger eyes, that would not really bring anything to the table. I think there's amazing topic that we don't know how to solve. I talk about AI, I talk about climate change. I mean, the connecting in between you is so important. But please, you'll be engaged, some of you, in this young people dialogue, but take it not, I understand it's an opportunity for you to have a career, to shine, to join, to be an old like me that manage money, and there's an easier life. This is it's a given, but there's also an opportunity for you to push us to the frontier in a way where we could test, experiment, discover. I'm not going to say co-lead, because this is not the way it works. We have structure, but you could nudge us in a direction that makes sense, because we might be afraid, we might be not aware of it. I mean, there's a lot of things that you know that we don't know. There's a lot of things that I know that you don't know. So please take us in the field where you have this desire, this energy, this structure, strategic push also. It has to be structured and strategic. So you engage with your own community. So fantastic opportunities. I hope we don't meet again in 10 years when you will be here talking to young people and asking them, please give us information. And we totally got it wrong on AI. It went in the wrong direction. We passed the 1.5 degrees. We went the wrong direction. And the new there can help us. No, you are the new. You are the energy. You have the capacity, but use it wisely for people with gray hair to be nudged in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you so much. But I think Britannia has one last final shout out.
One last shout out to the European Union. They also have a youth dialogue platform that really gathered 250 global youth-led and youth-serving organizations to really connect and continue the work that we're doing. So just wanted to announce that. Thanks.
Yeah. Get involved, guys. Get involved. I think it's a very nice segue as well, because as I wrap up this panel, we have the marketplace after this. So please use the opportunity to meet with the organizations. You know, I think EPD has a booth, GYM has a booth. get in touch with them, find out about their resources and their connections, and figure out how can we bring impact, not just in the context of this region, but also in our communities back home as well. So thank you so much to all my panelists. Please give them another round of applause for being very eloquent, for being so articulate. And I think as we move into after the most important agenda, which is lunch, I hope that you all come back here with more ideas and more discussions as well, because I think there's going to be a lot more different. We're going to look at different aspects of youth empowerment, and I think what's very important that I hope we've managed to highlight and emphasize today is the impact and the importance of the Youth Action Plan so far, and how it's not just a mandate, but also a responsibility and a commitment, and not just from the EU, but for every one of us in this room who have been the beneficiaries, who have been grantees, who have been participants in these programs, to continue looking into sustainable, effective mechanisms and structures like this to either to continue it or to bring it back to our countries. Thank you very much, everyone. Oh. Wow. Are we doing it? Yeah, we should. Yes. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Thank you so much. Thank you.